Right off the bat, I have bad news. There aren't that many new phones being launched with removable batteries. But that being said, here are the list of phones I found. Whichever one you have access to, buy that in that order. You've probably already heard of this first one. It's from the Samsung Xcover series. It's called the Xcover 6 Pro. Xcover is Samsung's ruggedized series which is primarily released in the US. You can get it with a carrier or buy it unlocked. It'll cost you about $599 USD, which is pretty expensive for the specs, but then again, it's not about the specs. It's about the ruggedized build and the removable battery. It's all about longevity and the ease of use when you're out in the field, so this phone is perfect for that. It has that walkie-talkie function on the side so you can use it on the spot, and it even has 5G. This phone is by far the latest and the most relevant phone for 2023. So for those of you in the States, you can easily get this one. Pretty much that's the only thing you need. You can even import the unlocked version, but if you can't find it, well, the other phones are pretty old, I'm afraid. These are like the newest phones or the most relevant phones I could find. So here they are. Next one is the Moto E6 Plus. I know it's a super old phone released back in 2019. There are no new phones anymore, but it is still kind of relevant. It has half decent specs and a removable battery with some respectable hardware performance. It has a splash repellent coating on it as well, so it can resist the weather a little bit. It's fairly lightweight, 149 grams as you can see, so running Android 9, it's not too far behind. It's obviously already out of date, so there won't be any software updates or anything, but if you're kind of tech savvy and you're okay with unlocking the bootloader and experimenting with custom ROMs, then these phones will be fine. Again, I'm not very sure how much of a community support you'll have for these devices. They're not exactly bangers. I mean, this was already a fairly budget-friendly phone back in the day, so you will find it for dirt cheap nowadays. So I guess that's the silver lining here. If you can't find the E6 Plus, you can get the E6 as well. It's a slightly lower version of the Plus, obviously, but it also has the same removable battery, around the same capacity, 3000 milliamp hours. The Snapdragon 435 will show its age much sooner, but as long as you just use these phones as basic communicators, you'll be fine. This next phone is actually the most recent one among the rest of these list. It's Nokia 1.3, released back in 2020. But it's a really low-end phone, that's why I'm mentioning it towards the end. It only has 1 GB of RAM. It's not gonna do anything more than just basic communication. But because of this lower hardware, the 3000 mAh battery on this will last a really long time, so this will be a great reliable secondary option. And I'm sure this is super affordable now, probably the cheapest in this list, so you won't have to worry about taking good care of it or anything. It's great for daily rough use. You might be excited to see that it's running Android 10, but it's the crappy version, the Android Go version. It was a failed project, unfortunately. It didn't run any app well. Again, you won't have a much better experience on this compared to regular Android. Go was supposed to be like a lightweight version that runs faster, but no, it didn't really accomplish its goal. So you will be stuck with the Go version of Android with this device. That's the huge downside, which is why it's kind of lower on the list. And finally, I mean, this is not exactly a smartphone, but if you just want a phone with removable battery that can do social media, I highly recommend you check out the Nokia 6300. It has 4G and all the social media apps like WhatsApp, Facebook, YouTube. It has a pretty decent screen, and I don't think you're worried about the camera or anything at this point. And the massive 1500 mAh battery with this tiny screen and mediocre hardware will last a really long time. You'll get really close to that traditional, Nokia level legendary battery with this phone. It supports Wi-Fi and hotspotting as well, so you can use this as a 4G hotspot if you want. And that about wraps it up. These were the phones that you could consider buying in 2023 onwards to have a removable battery. I know it sucks that there are so few options. I was considering recommending other phones like the LG V20 or the LG G5. You could still look at those. If I find anything, I'll link in the description, but they are very old at this point. Your only hope of getting some reliable performance out of that software are custom ROMs. You have to use some custom software now. I mean, you can get away with factory software, it's fine, but you won't be getting any software security updates or anything like that. So yeah, I mean, again, your mileage may vary as to what apps you actually use. I highly recommend checking out custom ROMs for these phones. And if you're lucky enough to get the Galaxy Xcover 6 Pro, then go ahead and buy it. It's obviously the best phone of the bunch. Did I miss any top secret phone which is like a dark horse that I didn't even consider? Let me know.